our webinar today with Sirius Decisions. I'm excited here to have Laz, and going to jump right into the introductions. And I'm Will Gibney, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at eCoast. And eCoast, we've been working with the channel and doing demand generation with them for over 11 years now, and I've been here for over 11 years now as well. And we built relationships with the leading channel organizations out there. I can remember Cisco. We started with them back in 2002, 2003, and I think they had 5 people in their channels when we were working with them, and creating these campaigns in the box and marketing vertically, and everyone was this was something completely new that they've never done before. So today, kind of fast forward, today we execute over 200 individual channel campaigns per month on behalf of companies and suppliers like Cisco. A couple other things, instead of my profile, you notice I put my Twitter background up there. I thought I'd change it up for you. If you did want to go ahead and follow us, I put my Twitter handle as well as eCoast. We're on there now, and we have a LinkedIn group that we maintain called VAR Marketing that gets a lot of activity as well. And also, I made note, check out our new website, which is ecoastsales.com, and we've updated that with new content. And I would like to introduce Laz Gonzales. And Laz is from the really Sirius Decisions, and I think they're the company that's known as the leading source of B2B sales and marketing, best practice research and data out there today. Laz?
Hey, Will, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me here today. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Again, my name is Laz Gonzales, and I'm the Service Director of Research for our channels practice at Sirius Decisions. And just for those of you who might not be familiar with us, we are an advisory firm focusing specifically on B2B sales and marketing best practices. And today I'm joining Will in this webcast to discuss something that a lot of organizations are looking at, which is, where do I spend my MDF dollars and what can I get in return? So again, thanks, Will, and thanks for having us here.
Thanks, Laz. We're excited to have you. So a few topics that we wanted to go over in terms of the agenda today, and the first one is always the housekeeping. Will this webinar be recorded? Can I get a copy of it? Yes, it will be recorded. Other standard stuff. The lines will be muted, and you can ask questions online, and you can really do that anytime during the presentation. So feel free to ask questions online, and if we can answer when you ask the question, we're happy to do that as well, and we may save some to the end as well. So for those of you who are on the last webinar that we did with Laz and Sirius, which probably occurred about 6 to 8 months ago now, really what we did was we talked about this old way of channel marketing and how that was more channel. The channel was secondary and the supplier led it. And really now there's this new way of channel marketing that many of you are familiar with or are trying to figure out. And really I think the term there is partner-led. And so the partner-led, it was all about, how do we design these new programs? How do we promote these new campaigns that we can execute through the channel? But not only that, though, is okay, once you promote them, you got to get them engaged, and then how do you execute with these partners that have varying skill levels all over the board? And then, how do you track it and make sure that it's actually turning out, the MDF is turning into actual revenue in terms of pipeline and in terms of close sales at the end of the day. And here to talk more about today's topic is Laz.
Right. Well, so today, rather than focus on changing from the old to the new, what we're really going to dive into is this whole topic around marketing development funds and how are they being used, what's the right formula for applying them in different types of marketing with the channel, specifically 3 modes of marketing, marketing to, marketing through, and marketing for partners. So we'll get into each one of those, and you're probably going to see some data today that you've never seen before, and that's how companies spend MDF using these 3 delivery modes. So your time will be well spent looking at some of this and seeing how you compare. Then we're going to, with the help of eCoast, look at some program examples. Demand generation vendors like eCoast have been working with suppliers, as you heard earlier, for some time now. And so there's some forensic evidence here that there are some programs that work better than others. And today we're going to actually get a chance to look at some of those. And we're not going to let you walk away empty-handed. We'll give you some best practice advice at the end of this. And also what we've agreed to do is share some research with you. So we'll actually make a research brief available to you for those of you who are looking for a step-by-step, or what I like to call the IKEA instruction manual for MDF. So having said that, the first point here is about looking at calculating MDF. So why don't we just take a step back and start thinking about MDF, give it a little bit of a definition, and see what are companies doing to actually calculate MDF and move forward. So, Will, I think maybe you could advance that. There we go. Perfect.
Sorry about that. You want this one, Laz?
Perfect. Thanks a lot. So, first of all, let's talk about MDF, and let's give it some definition. A lot of companies use the different nomenclature when describing MDF. So, just for the record, let's say that MDF is marketing development funds. Okay, so it's not marketing after you cross the finish line and I reward you funds. And I don't mean to be facetious about that, but there are other programs such as rebates and volume incentives which really reward partners after they've achieved the goal. What we're really talking about here is marketing funds that we can apply to develop new opportunities, build pipeline, create new leads. And that being the case, where are these programs headed? Well, first of all, there is, as we talked about in the last webcast, an onerous process out there. Anecdotally, I'll share with you, I remember sitting this summer with a gentleman who was a channel development manager and very high-powered, carried a big number, ran the Northeast for a large technology company. And his gripe was, it takes me 5 forms in about 2 weeks to get MDF approved for a partner play. And, all I really want to do is build some business out here, and we need to fix this. So that onerous process leads partners to believe that, maybe they're not entitled, or they just don't have the bandwidth to sit down and go through all the justifications. That's a big deal. And what we're finding is that a lot of these dollars go unused as a result of that. Just within our client base, which consists of about, I'd say maybe 500 B2B companies, about 70% of those companies in the high-tech sector, we're tracking about $4 billion in unused MDF programs. So that gives you an idea of the magnitude of this kind of investment and where it's going. Now, where specifically is this coming from? Well, we look at 2 modes of marketing in the channel, and we'll expand that a little bit later when we apply some rigor and some data to this. But here's a chart that talks about the percent of the channel marketing budget spent by deployment type. And here we're talking about companies that range anywhere from 100 million to 20 billion. And within those companies, you can see there's a variance in terms of how much of their channel marketing budget goes to supplier to partner. That means we're marketing to the partner versus partner to customer, and those are those partner-led type initiatives that you guys work well with. The key here is that most of this is coming from 85% of those lead gen programs. So really coming out of the gate, thinking about using MDF to drive leads and to contribute to pipeline, we need to recognize that those efforts are getting stalled by partners and organizations who, on the one hand, make it very difficult for partners to apply for the funds and all the proof of performance and validation. And on the other hand, the actual lead generation efforts and the programs themselves aren't getting off the ground. So this points to a big, big problem. And so what we're going to try and do today is start addressing that and giving you a formula for really starting to look at how to apply this the right way. So in order to do that, we're going to have to use a data model. And at Sirius Decisions, we develop what's called the TREAD model. And TREAD stands for Technology, Recruitment, Enablement, and Demand Creation. So if you think about it in the channel, for the most part, if you simplify the exercise, it looks like most companies spend most of their efforts recruiting, that is finding the right partners, then enabling them on their solutions and enabling them on sales and getting them trained on the delivery of the messaging to the customers, and then ultimately the demand creation, and that's where they go out there and they shake some trees and they try to drive some business. So what we've done is we've taken those three modes and said, okay, underneath that there's an underlying platform, the technology, deal registration, MDF calculation, partner portals, you name it, that support those three initiatives. So with the TREAD model, we can tell what percentage of the spend is going through programs versus personnel. We can tell how much marketing is going through the partner or to the partner, or we can tell whether your spend versus your peers are in line by comparing benchmarks. And this is an easy survey. And if you're interested in doing this, just please contact eCoast, or you can contact us directly. You'll see some slides at the end. And we'd be happy to benchmark you. It's always good to add other companies to the data. But with that, let's take a reality check and look at channel marketing spend. So the first question that should come to your mind when you look at this slide now, which is really just an illustration of the previous slide where we're looking at the same kind of companies, 100 million down to 20 plus billion. First of all is the percentage of revenue, the percentage of channel marketing as revenue. So smaller companies, 2 to 4% investment, 1 to 5 billion, 3 to 5%, 5 billion to 10 billion, 1 to 4%, 10 billion to 20 billion, 1 to 3%. Now, if you're a CMO or a VP of marketing and you're thinking about whether or not you're spending in the channel, those percentages should worry you. You should take a look and see if you're even spending enough in the first place in the channel. The second thing is how you're spending it. So the first thing we want to do is take a binary cut at this spend and say, for example, that companies between 100 million and 1 billion who spend 2 to 4% in channel marketing as a percentage of revenue tend to use those budget dollars evenly in terms of people and programs. As those companies start growing and become better at working in the channel, you notice that their program spend gets a little higher. So they tend to leverage their people and create more programs using outside agencies and using new technology providers. We see these fixed costs kind of normalizing through SaaS-based tools like marketing automation platforms, CRM, and even more dependency on agencies. Now, on the second level, when you're looking at companies between 1 and 5 billion, where they're getting that leverage 55 to 45, now we're talking about an increase in technology spend in order to get that leverage, and also focus more on vertical solutions, global markets. So these folks have no choice but to try and really get more out of their channel organization as the company demands more from their channel partners in terms of growth and revenue. Now, the larger companies, those that can get 60 or 70% of their spend through programs, well, they certainly have higher program to personnel ratio, but also higher system costs as they enter into enterprise contracts with vendors to automate some of the processes in the channel. And one good example of that are syndication tools, which companies use to go ahead and syndicate content. Now, with the TREAD model, we uncovered 3 deployment modes in the channel. So this is how we've learned from our 500 or so B2B technology company customers. What are they doing in the channel with channel marketing? And the first thing they tell us is that there's an increased focus on awareness. We're marketing to partners, and it's describing to them what we're doing, what are some of the programs that we're offering them, and we call that supplier to partner because it's created from the supplier and delivered to the partner. The second one is marketing through the partner. And when we're talking about marketing through the partner, that's that partner-led marketing where the partner is taking the assets or the programs and delivering them to the customer. And then finally, the third one is marketing for the partner. And there we call that supplier to customer because the supplier is creating the program and delivering it directly to the customer. But there's a little caveat here. It's on behalf of the partner. So in some cases, maybe companies don't do this one as much, but in other cases, companies do much more of this than they want to, and they're always trying to go in other different directions. So, Will, I'll just put a question out to you. Which one of these do you see on the rise, considering that you're working with a number of companies on this front?
Yeah, more and more, Laz, we see the partner to the customer, marketing through the partners. where a lot of these suppliers today want to scale. They know that these partners already have the relationship, so they're trying their best to enable them, to arm them with these different marketing tactics, these different tools, and get them get them going, get them fired up about marketing and creating more of a cadence rather than a one-off event. So we see that to be the biggest thing today.
Well, that's a good point, because as companies start thinking about marketing through the partner, we start thinking about MDF, right? We start thinking about, well, how can we influence their behavior? How can we get them to do some of the work? How can we get them to drive some of the marketing initiatives? And so when we talk about the first two, supplier to partner and partner to customer, right? So marketing to the partner, marketing through the partner, that's where MDF starts playing a big role. So for example, on the right-hand side, you'll see that on a partner to customer, the partner-led type initiative that you just mentioned, Will, 80 to 90% of that is allocated to MDF. So it's almost exclusively MDF. On the other hand, on supplier to partner, that is where the supplier is driving the marketing message with the partner themselves, in two-tier channels. Specifically when you have a distributor and resellers, we're seeing MDF being applied up to about 50% of the MDF, specifically to allow distributors to reach sub-resellers. So, programs that are built around awareness, around social media, around getting the partner's mind share. And that's a specific thing on the two-tier channels, not to say that you don't see that with other types of partners. But so 80% of the partner-led, 50% of the supplier to partner, and so that's kind of worrying. So let's do this. Why don't we put our math hats on, and if you don't have a math hat, just kind of hang on there for a second. This is not going to be terribly difficult. But what we're going to do is going to walk you through a formula that we've seen companies use when calculating MDF. So again, this is important for some of you, and we'll leave these slides up so you can kind of look at the numbers and maybe see if you can kind of apply your own metrics to this. But for example, let's say that you're a company that generates $350 million in revenue, and 60% of that is through the channel, right? So now, on average, as we said, anywhere between 1 to 5% is going to go into channel marketing. In this case, the company spends 3.5% of revenue in channel marketing. So really, it's 12.3 million of that 350 that's going to channel marketing. Pretty straightforward, right, Will?
Correct.
Will's got his calculator out validating all of this right now. So now 60% of that is applied to channel marketing. Okay, so 60% of the 12.3 million, okay, if we remember the program to personnel, so 60% is going to go program, is applied to the channel marketing program. That's going to be 7.3 million. We started with 350. We then took 3.5% of that. We ended up with 12.3. Of that 12.3, we're taking into account a 60-40 split. 40% goes to personnel, 60% goes to the program. We're at 7.3 million now. Now the next thing is to look at that channel marketing budget based on those deployment options. And we say, okay, 38% is supplier to partner. So that means that about a third of the spend in the channel marketing is going towards awareness. And of that, remember, up to 50% is being used for MDF. So here we're talking about 1.4 million. The second deployment option, the partner-led, so these are the lead-generating activities. 55% of that channel marketing fund is going to those lead-generating activities. Of that, 85%, remember 80 to 90% of that could go into MDF, is being applied to MDF. So now we're talking about 3.4 million. So the formula leads the 1.4 from supplier to partner plus the 3.4 from partner-led, and that means that our budget for MDF is going to be 4.8 million. So, just let's leave this up for a quick second so that folks can take a look at it, and maybe at the end of this, if you have any questions on the math, we can take them as well. Okay, so 4.8 million, that's pretty interesting. And if we take a look at how companies spend in the channel, you can see that we're right in line. In fact, organizations, and this is to your point, Will, you see that move to partner to customer or partner-led, correct?
There it is. Yep.
And so if that's the case, most companies, like you said, want to spend their MDF in this area. So they want to spend up to half of it in partner-led and some portion of it in direct programs that they're delivering to the customer. However, what we're finding is that if you're not spending in this first bucket, which is the awareness and mind share, that is to communicate your programs to the partner, the adoption rates on MDF drop to the basement. In fact, we're tracking them below 25%, maybe even 20%. So that means that 1 in 5 partners will pay attention for what you've given them or what you're offering them, if just on average, if you're not reminding them of what's available to them. So this is a big takeaway for most of you on the call today, to think about whether when you deliver programs to your channel, are you including a certain percentage of that program investment in in supplier to partner communication? Because if you're not, take a look at your adoption numbers, and if you see that they're less than what you want them to be, that's where you're going to start thinking about increasing that first bucket. And so MDF's impact on this partner adoption is huge, right? And when we think about MDF to get partners to adopt materials, it's important to think that it encourages partners to actively participate in channel marketing programs. And really, this could be at the rep level using points-based or reward programs that we see commonly used by some companies. It influences partner behaviors, so it allows you to set milestones and say, you know, if you cross this line, we can get you more marketing dollars. So what we want you to try and do is meet those milestones. So influencing behavior and meeting those milestones is another big impact of MDF. And it really can be a tool for managing, as Will said, the cadence or the timing. So it creates a continuous milestone reward process versus a one-time contest. And Will, you might want to validate this, but we often see a lot of shotgun approaches in the channel in terms of marketing dollars.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I agree with you, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along.
now, one thing, and some folks will, they come to us and they say, well, you know, what can we do to fix this sometimes, especially when we talk about this adoption? And so what we like to say is, you know, how many of you are actually doing any kind of marketing certification for your channel partners? Now, some of you might be scratching your heads and saying, you know, marketing certification for channel partners? I didn't even know there was marketing people in the channel. Again, trying to be a little lighthearted about the fact that the channel really does lack a lot of the marketing resources and know-how, let alone the channel-side technology. But it's also the supplier. The supplier works in silos many times. So the organization that trains the partners isn't necessarily the organization that's engaging with them in demand creation programs. And one best practice, and we'll have a couple of these during the call today, is to actually connect the two organizations through an interlock mechanism where what happens is that as you train the partner, you certify them on, let's say, running a successful campaign. At the end of the certification, we reward them with, you know, some kind of accolade, and then say, okay, now that you've completed the certification process, here's a menu of activities that you can use your first 2,500 MDF points. Folks, if you just did that, you would increase your adoption in the channel by 3x. We're finding that companies that can make that interlock actually do better in getting the partners to participate in the demand gen. And that's just by simply connecting training to demand generation. Okay? So something to keep in mind as we continue discussing the use of MDF. So, so where are these different programs and how are they being funded? Well, if you take a look at marketing to partners, and again, we're taking just that line of demand creation from the TREAD model, and we look at 35 to 57% based on the earlier slides that we talked about, we still see funded headcount as being the #1 spend for MDF. We see that closely followed by solution centers. So, for example, EMC announcing an Ingram Solution Center, Cisco announcing one with a different type of partner or distributor, and even then OEM marketing. We see a lot of cross-marketing with different alliances. So EMC and Cisco announcing joint venture and data services. That's another example. My question is, Where's the ROI? How can you prove to me that by funding ahead at a particular channel partner actually can give you pipeline or can give you new deals? It can help you raise awareness, there's no doubt. And it can also help you be there on the spot to have that mind share. But can you measure that? And so what we like to see is look at what are the programs that you can measure, which are the ones that are scalable. And I think we might have some folks from Cisco on the line, and I'm a big fan. They're a client of ours, and this is something that they have out there publicly for their partners, which shows some of the marketing to the partner empowered by Cisco using these high-tech widgets that they're sending out to the channel. So for example, notice what the content is. The content is all about the partner. It's all about growing their business. It's how to find the long-forgotten lead. Oh, and by the way, as we discuss this, let's talk about the hiring challenges that you might face. But they're savvy enough to go back in there and say, hey, by the way, if you're interested, here is LAMP technology, and here's how it can help you. So they kind of slide that message in there, but they keep everything relevant to the value to the partner. And that's really important, especially to these smaller partners. Then they go on to create videos, which they probably have a library up, but they repurpose them. So if your concern is if your partner doesn't know how to deliver the message, well, enable them through some content and maybe even have a product manager help them deliver that message to customers or prospects who might be visiting their websites or and engaging with them in one way or another. So, this is certainly a best practice. And another example of marketing to the partner is really through social media. So if you think about impacting partner adoption through social media, there's a lot of noise out there right now. There are companies talking about, how inexpensive they got that flight from Los Angeles to Seattle. Folks, who really cares about that? What partners really want to know is, how can you help me drive more business? And so here's a quick Twitter feed from Microsoft, where what they've done here is that they've used social media to drive the content or drive the partner to where the campaign landing pages are. So for example, many offers for Microsoft U.S. customers through this period to this period. In fact, that's an MDF-driven program. So here's the incentives for the partner. And if the partner follows the URL, you'll see that they'll come to a landing page. And in that landing page, they'll see the Big Easy campaign. And the Big Easy campaign is an MDF-funded type campaign or incentive-funded campaign which they can participate in. Just a very strategic use of MDF to get partners to move towards the programs. And I think it's a pretty successful type of application for this. Now, when we look at some of the other categories, I think it's also important for us to take a look at some of the examples that we have here. So before we can actually engage with a partner, you've got to realize that you've got to do something about this adoption. And the real thing is around bandwidth. Don't think that you're the only company that's working with the partner. We're tracking, on average, that companies have maybe 6 to 7 vendors that they're listening to. So what are those top 5 reasons that partners don't engage with suppliers? First of all, too many vendors, right? The offer doesn't resonate. It's not enough value. They're not able to find what they're looking for. And you might also say there's some gaps in the partner skills and resources. And then finally, there's this one point, which is it's too difficult to engage. We talked about that a little earlier. So Will, here's a question for you. What can companies do to realistically address some of the issues? What are you guys seeing?
Yeah, it's interesting because, the suppliers that we work with, a lot of the suppliers, we work with SMB partners as well, and these SMB partners don't have that capability. And so where we kind of fill that gap is we serve as their marketing guide, and we help them along the way. And it's really much more of an educational process. In addition to executing a campaign, you're educating the partner on how to do this, how to go about it. How do I get a list? What do I start with first? And so you walk them through that, and then we start to actually teach them the skills that they're going to need to execute campaigns, even as they go along. But more and more, we see that as we need to serve as that marketing expert and guide for them to move them along and have a successful engagement.
Yeah, and if I could put a label on that, I would say that that's that kind of prescriptive marketing that you're probably working with the supplier to get the partner and acting sort of as a concierge through the whole process. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that would definitely be correct. And when you get into those, you think, oh, it's just going to run very smoothly and it'll be, here you go, partner. But in a lot of cases, the partner wants to understand how the process works and doesn't, really fully get it yet. So you really have to help them because, and like you said, in many cases, marketing is not their skill set. They have a different set of skills, and so you're trying to, get them up to speed as they, look to grow beyond generating referrals.
Well, I'll tell you, not to belabor the point, but if you really think about that bandwidth and you think about those sales managers working in the channel with different suppliers, we find that there's an inordinate amount of messaging being delivered to them. And if you think about it, as we mentioned before, most of these smaller partners, they have 2 or 3 key vendor relationships that they're really trying to work with, whether they're in unified communications, whether they're in a vertical like finance, whatever the case is, they've got those go-to solutions that they're taking to the customer. But again, as those suppliers try to drive that messaging with the reps, think about it. Considering the partners, considering the different types, considering the average number of reps that they're sending, the numbers are really staggering. You just take, for example, the subject of cloud computing. For those folks on the call, how many emails did you get over the last week on cloud computing? Think about it, right? So this is the life of the small technology partner who's sitting out there trying to decipher through all this messaging, and they're just getting onslaught with all these different offers in these programs. So, it's really something to think about as you start looking at the cadence and the delivery of these programs in light of these different relationships that the partners have.
Yeah,
so,
go ahead, Laz, sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying, what do you see in terms of funding? Because, is it about getting the partner to chip in terms of the funding, or what do you feel is out there?
Yeah, we've always heard that. What we've seen, especially today, because of so much noise and so much going on, partners appreciate the 100% funding. And the gut feel that we see, because a lot of times we'll serve as the communication vehicle for, say, a distributor or a supplier to a partner to say, we have this campaign available to you. It's valued at $4,000. And the partner, in many cases, will say, well, all right, well, how much do I have to pay? And we say, well, you don't. This is a completely fully funded campaign. And you can say, oh, they really appreciate it, and a lot of them really appreciate it. So more and more, I think it's tough to track, but I think they appreciate it, and it builds loyalty. They get excited about it, and and then it gets to the top of the list. Whereas if it's 50% funded, it becomes a sales game in trying to sell the partner, and they don't feel like you're partnering with them, that you're trying to sell them something and you're taking a cut or something. So it doesn't work. I mean, it does work sometimes, but it's so much better in today's world where you're going to get so much more adoption at that 100% funding level in making sure you're choosing the right partner.
Would you think it's something, is it around focusing on the value of the program? Because sometimes when you say 100% funded, in some cases, don't you see that, for example, it's 100% funded, but you'll use some of your MDF dollars to pay for it?
Oh, yeah. Well, exactly. That may be the case. Maybe they'll use their MDF, or maybe it will be 100% funded. But yeah, there's that MDF component in there that it just the MDF may go to, say, a vendor versus the partner. But at the end of the day, it's MDF. And the other point you need to remember too, a lot of these 100% funding things goes back to your model, Laz, of they did the training. They became UC 300 certified, and now they're going to get this campaign. So they've invested already in training and certification, and the 100% funding is a reward for them to execute some campaigns, get some leads for their new solution that they became certified in.
There you go. There's some strings attached, it seems.
There usually is.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting, but the point now it becomes is so where do you invest? What kind of programs have the greatest traction in terms of driving leads and opportunities. And here's where we're going to land our conversation on this partner-led marketing, because this is really what a lot of folks have joined this call for, Will. And so what are those types of programs? The first thing I'll say is that it is the largest spend area, so 35 to 54 on a constant basis. More than half of channel marketing budgets are coming into this bucket. So that's marketing through the partner. And we've talked about appointment-based packages and even filling the gaps with some digital search campaigns that a lot of suppliers are starting to do with partners. These are just indicative of some of the plays that we're seeing are going through this MDF investment. So what I'd like to do is, maybe even dig a little bit deeper here and talk about some of these plays. And for that, we need to go to companies like you, Will, who are working with some of the suppliers. So can you just kind of walk us through what these plays are, what's involved, what the partner gets, and what are some of the results on the back end?
Yeah, sure, Laz. Let's talk about Google AdWords first, which is essentially, a partner-led campaign that's via Google, obviously. And here's an example of a landing page that's used for a Google AdWords campaign. You can see it's co-branded. There's a call to action as well for a case study. So the partners can choose if they wanted to do this Google AdWords. So this partner raised their hand based on viewing a matrix of different campaigns or plays, as we call them, that they could choose from based on their MDF funding level. And so this package was designed based on the $2,500 MDF funding level that you'll see in one of the next slides. And it was actually funded through distribution. And if you go to, we can see this is actually the Google the Google page within Google that shows the campaign detail, the budget. You can see there's a $500 actual budget in Google for the keywords and for the ads, and you'll see the ads in there as well. And we actually would create these for the partner and do this activity for the partner to get it all up to speed. Because, in terms of marketing, we have Google certified people over here that do this every day for a living. And actually, we're doing I would say we have about 35 active Google AdWords campaigns strictly on behalf of channel partners that are co-branded, just like the ones that you see, or just like this Ash Creek one that you see here today. And here's the package. So it goes back to that prescriptive campaign that we design on behalf of the partner, on behalf of the supplier as well. So it's easily consumable, as you can see there. And so the partners can choose from it. They can choose their call to action based on their certain technologies they can choose as well. So then we can go ahead, we execute this, and then we work with the partner, and really you provide that education as well. So even with Google, it is a very educational experience, as most of these partners have heard it before, they just have never actually done it. Another thing that we see that's more and more getting out there, I was at CompTIA last month, this event, and the two sessions, the breakout sessions that got the most attendance were cloud computing, as you might expect, but it was also social media. How do I engage in social media? So we've created this package to help partners engage with social media. So as we've done this, we probably do about 15 of these a month today. So what we're doing is as this is new, we're revamping this to address some of the other supplier concerns that we've heard. One of them, the concern is, how do we keep the partners doing this eCoast? It's good to get them up to speed, so how do we keep them doing this? And two, the other concern is, how do I get my messaging on there? With Google AdWords, I know it's co-branded. I know you guys control the content, so how do I get the content to be co-branded as well? So we're working today on creating a new package that really revamps that package, and it's going to be able to tie in all the new types of things that you can do on things like LinkedIn with company pages and do some co-branding right there. And you can see we got our first ever little testimonial on Twitter about one of our packages there from a partner.
Good. Will, I just wanted to add something there.
Sure.
It's really about getting some of those tangible results at the end, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and social media is not there yet, but it's getting there. You can see there is enough interest, and there's enough people want to figure this out, and how can we show results in social media, and it's going to get there. It's not there yet today.
Good point.
So Laz, as we transition from that, we wanted to talk about more, what do you see that's working for these, direct resellers and these two-tier channel partners?
Yeah, the one point here is not every partner is the same, right? So what might work for a distributor might not necessarily work for a managed services provider or a corporate reseller. And so here's a chance for those of you on the call to kind of take a look at your type of channel partner. And what we're going to do now is we're going to get into the most effective programs and come back to you with what was the investment, what was the return on the investment, and what activities actually took place. And we'll do that for different types of partners. The one I often get asked about are the direct partners, specifically the corporate resellers. So these are the larger resellers. They buy direct from the supplier, and they sell really all over the place. Some of them mostly specialized with large enterprises, but we see a lot of these guys moving to small to mid-sized enterprises as well. So here's the cast of characters, right? It's CDW, SHI, Software House International, Insight, SoftChoice. And as I mentioned, they cover the small to mid-sized enterprise, general territory, and large accounts. They manage complex volume purchasing programs for customers. When they're speaking to customers, it's usually telesales folks, and if you've ever been at one of these companies, you'll see, they have stadium seating, they have a couple of hundred folks on the phone at any point in time, and they have some specialists. So some of the keys that we've heard is, employing these specialists on your campaigns. And some of them offer blocks of time. So for example, if you want us to engage with you on a campaign, they might say, we'll have 6 reps making outbound calls for the duration of 30 days. So you're almost like renting some of their inside sales resources. The way they measure themselves is they track quota week to week, month to month, and the specialists in specific areas, again, a vertical or a complex solution such as virtualization and storage, become the nerve center for the rest of the organization. So now if you think about that, the reality with these organizations is that they have minimal or no marketing expertise. So I remember the day I sat, and I won't say who it was, but I sat across from the CMO at one of these corporate resellers, and I asked them, what are you doing to, create marketing campaigns internally? Are you investing in marketing automation platforms? And I remember this person looked me straight in the eye and said, are you kidding? Marketing automation platforms? I'm lucky I got sales to invest in a CRM system. So I will say that that was an ex-CMO at the corporate reseller. I think they've moved away from that kind of thinking since then, and really it's really the suppliers like you on this call. So this is not just a nice picture of Will with a big fish, and that's what we wanted to do here was really get this kind of thinking across to you. It's really about teaching these guys to fish. And how do you do that, Will?
Yeah, thanks, Laz. I love to fish, so we're going to use this as an analogy, and I've been doing this since I was a little kid fishing, and however, most of my experience was actually in the freshwater, and I'd fish in lakes and rivers. But this fish that I caught is a striped bass, and it was in the ocean, right outside of Newburyport, Mass. This summer. And I knew right off the bat that I couldn't use the same techniques in the ocean that I use in the freshwater. And I could try to learn myself about how to do this, but to maximize my time, because I already knew how to fish, I luckily had someone very experienced to guide me in this type of fishing. And what he was able to do was give me the right tools that I can be successful with, and the instruction. So he gave me the rod, and the right bait, and the right hook, and the right sinkers, and the right methodology. And so what we're doing here with these DMRs, if you will, is they already know how to fish. We're just outfitting them to fish. We're giving them the tools that they can use to fish for a specific supplier. And so what this approach is okay, let's outfit you to fish. Let's get you information on your solution. Let's get you some technical training. Let's get you the value propositions. Let's get you who the target account should be and who to go after. So this is the approach that we've taken, and what we're going to do is show you a couple case studies here. And what we've designed is we call this a call blitz. And the call blitz is really a one-day event where they get all the salespeople together calling for the specific supplier, typically on a specific solution. Why this works? I think there's a few reasons why this program works. One of the reasons is exactly what Laz says, it positions to do what the partner does best. Really, they already know how to fish. There's also a program where we can teach them to fish on the partners that maybe don't know how to fish. But instead of doing this as a one-time event, it's a one-day event, and then they nurture for about a month after that, these opportunities. But in addition to that, there's a cadence. So the cadence is a quarterly cadence with different solutions. But there's also, gets really neat about it is there's collaboration between the supplier, actually the individual account manager, and the sales team over there. So they collaborate on things like lists. Who do we want to target? Who do we want to go after? They also talk about set up incentives. And so it's highly competitive as well. So they're competing against each other. We actually have within our CallBlitz portal, we have a ticker, like a stock ticker, that goes across and says who got an appointment recently, where it was, and they do it by teams. So we have incentives like Amazon or Best Buy cards, and they also tie this to their rewards program that the supplier does, so they can reward the partner on different activities, as well as you could do deal registration, so you could attach it there. So this is one DMR campaign that we did. You can see the actual results. You can see the marketing contribution to pipeline was way off the charts in terms of best practices that Sirius discussed, and also campaign 2 on a different DMR campaign. Same type of cadence, same type of activity, just a little bit of a smaller type of program. So these are ongoing campaigns that are running. We also do this as well. I should mention, this program really got started by scaling out to smaller partners across an entire partner community. So instead of companies like eCoast doing the calling, we enable the partners to do the calling. But because this program fits so well with people who already know how to do it, here's where you can see, it's a no-brainer ROI. You can see how these activities lead to revenue and how it's really taken off within the DMR type of organizations because they are such a unique unique partner to work with.
If I could just jump in there for a second and just mention something on that previous slide. Folks, if you haven't done so already, get the pencils out, get the papers out. This is what you should be trying to do. If you're stopped in the hallway by your operations or sales VPs and they ask you, what did we do with that $25K investment? If you can come back to them and say, well, we did a focus campaign, we got 50 of the smartest reps at that corporate reseller over a 1-month time frame, and that $25K investment yielded 85 leads, $3 million in pipeline, and the marketing contribution 120 to 1. Today, that conversation is not taking place because of the lack of visibility and really the question about where this money is going, right? So I always try to tell my clients, if you're stopped in the hallway and you're kind of asked, what did we get with that investment we made? These are the kinds of answers you should have ready. So, well, great example there, but let's talk about some other types of partners too, because it's not just corporate resellers. A lot of companies on the line today work with distributors and sub-resellers. So what we thought we'd do is maybe share with them some of the best practices in delivering programs to them. And, this involves the distributor. So if we think about that distributor, what's really going on there from a TRED perspective, remember technology, recruitment, enablement, and demand creation, we see them investing in marketing automation, lead distribution. We see them playing a hand in terms of recruiting the right set of partners to work with. We also see them doing a lot more enablement, getting involved in some vertical industries, and really investing more in lead generating programs. As you can see in a couple of examples that are coming, they're engaging with companies like eCoast to do demand gen for their suppliers. Now, having said that, there's some challenges that are intrinsic to working with the distributors. Number one is the lack of technology integration between the multiple CRM packages and the lead sharing systems. I think the best we can do now is just make it easy for the partner to enter the information and ask the distributor where they can't gather the information to upload that in batch into the supplier systems. To put 2-3 systems in place just won't work. Really, the cadence is also a big deal. They're just not doing this with one supplier. They're doing this with all of their suppliers. So really, it's slipping your program in there at the right time so that you get the maximum mind share from the distributor reps calling on the sub-resellers. They suffer from the same issues of lack of adoption and supplier follow-up. So you really have to plan for these when you start thinking about the campaigns that you're delivering to them. However, that being said, we see that distribution is really factoring heavy in terms of MDF, so we see them really getting involved in those Tier 1, Tier 2. We see an increase in the channel marketing budgets for distributors, so we see companies spending up to 38% more through distributors, marketing to partners and doing some of that supplier to partner marketing. And then we also see that the distributors are using incentives, supplier incentives, to get those sub-resellers to come on board. So MDF is well received. Question is it going to the distributor's bottom line, or is it actually getting passed on to the partner themselves? So having said that, let's talk about some of those resellers that the distributors create these programs for. And Will, maybe you can give us another one of those, ROI shots on what's going on with the kind of partners you work with in this realm.
Yeah, thanks, Laz. Yeah, it's interesting because these types of standard campaigns that kind of fundamentally try to look for more or set up appointments for partners still work. And I think the reason they still work is they position the partner to do what they do best, and that's really get in front of a customer face to face, provide consulting, guidance, build relationships, and that's what partners do best. If we sent them over 25 leads, we know what happens. The partners don't want 25 leads. They don't follow up on leads. But on appointments, they attend appointments, they go there, and they find additional opportunities. And you can see that this Canadian solution provider up in Canada is a Cisco of R. We did a 8-appointment campaign for them. Actually, I think it was a 10-appointment campaign. And we generated over $1 million in pipeline, and they closed 2 deals so far. I think there's still more in the pipeline, obviously, that are just about 100K. So it's kind of one of those things that we just recently received this, and you can see it works. You can prove ROI out there. It is good with appointment setting, and it was one of these partners that was MDF funded as well.
Again, an excellent analysis on the right here. I mean, think about that. What did you do with the $8,000 that we spent in the channel? Well, I generated 10 appointments to managed services providers, and I created $1.1 million in pipe and closed 2 deals at $95,000. What a great answer that is. Okay, and so now the last thing is let's just look at these sub-resellers and a little bit more on the VARs themselves, the smaller guys, because the last one was a little bit bigger partner. And without belaboring the point, we all know what these small to mid-sized resellers look like. They're strong technical background, but they don't really have the marketing expertise or staff. So what are you guys doing to help these guys, Will?
Yeah. In almost every one of those surveys, I was just thinking back to Everything Channel when they do the surveys of marketing and what do you want from your suppliers. It always the #1 request from the partners is we want more leads. But I don't really think they want more leads when you think about it. I think they want more qualified leads. When they get more leads, what we hear time and time again is they cherry pick the leads. You send them 20 leads, they're going to pick the top 3 that look good. They're going to follow up on those. 17 others, they're not even going to bother with. They don't have the processes. They don't have the bandwidth. They've been burned before on all these leads. So what they want more qualified leads that are further down the funnel. And Laz, I think your demand waterfall that Sirius really has coined is a perfect example of where typically they receive the leads and where it doesn't work for the channel. If you had to put the channel where the optimal space would be, it would be further along down in that sales accepted area. The percentage of sales accepted leads has to be so high. I would say it has to be like 85%, whereas the average is just for every partner is 58%. So they can't call for every 2 leads and only get 1 that they're going to take. It just they're not going to do that. And what do you think on that, Laz?
I just think you're hitting the nail with the sledgehammer here. I mean, it really is that partners know of 2 kinds of leads: junk that they know about and junk that they don't know about, right? And the reason is because it's easy for marketing to fill the top of the funnel. But the key is that you have to get into a little bit more description of what these leads are. To small to mid-sized enterprise, you might want to deliver level 2 leads because it's up to the partner to then follow up with those. But making it clear to them that what's the difference between an inquiry, what's the difference between a level 1 or level 2 lead, because the expectations are going to be that this is a customer who's interested in having a conversation about your solution. And many times, for example, yesterday we were at a panel study in Boston where we had about a dozen high-tech companies, and it was like the partner was jumping on the call or going after the appointment and saying, hey, you told me this was a marketing qualified lead and they wanted to have a discussion about this, and I found out that the guy was just kind of, you know, doing his own education on your product and not necessarily interested in buying anything. So it really becomes that BANT qualification that we kind of allude to all the time, and knowing that you're not always going to deliver level 5 leads to a partner, because then you're just chasing paper. So again, important to have that cost per lead right forefront.
Yeah, just one thing on that slide, Laz, I would think the level 3 is where the partners need to be in that $650 to $1,700 range, where they need it further along the sales cycle. And I think this is a a good example here, a recent example of that, and not only serving, and also, serving as a marketing guide for this smaller partner, where you really walk them through that. But at the end of the day, they still got in front of the right people. They got these sales qualified leads, and that's what matters at the end of the day. You can hold their hand, you can help them along, but if they're not getting sales qualified leads, then they're not going to care. So this is one example I wanted to put in there. And there's one more I wanted to show you as well, because I loved it from Zycom, another small partner, who, again, sales qualified, sales accepted. It's a level 3 lead, going back to that slide, where you can see that the partner, they want to be further along. And we set up the meeting with them. They sat down. They got instantly on the same page, sales qualified, sales accepted. And then you can see it will hit the pipeline very quickly, because they know they needed an upgrade, or maybe they just needed switches at the end. And you can see that they're already talking, hey, there's 40K, it's going to hit the pipeline, it's for Cisco. This was a Cisco-funded event or campaign. So right really where the sweet spot is for the partners at the end of the day. So when it's all said and done, what we see is results-oriented campaigns, pay-for-performance type of packages, prescribed campaigns that they're going to be able to feel good about. The partners are going to say, hey, if I invest my time, effort, and energy and use this MDF, I know I'm going to get or have a good chance of getting back some solid results here, is what we've seen has worked.
Excellent. And that feedback is fantastic, because that just flies in the face of what's going out there. And so, I think you're right. It's about maintaining that steady balance and making sure that, not only are you delivering the right kind of leads, but also reminding partners as to what they're supposed to do when they receive these, and what can actually be done as a second step or a third step with that customer. So in terms of takeaways, we just have some closing issues, and we'll take a couple of questions after this. We want you to really start with your overall channel marketing budget and examine whether you're spending enough in that supplier to partner versus the partner to customer. A lot of companies don't look at it that way. We challenge you to do that and really see if the balance is there. And if it's not, quickly look to partner adoption for your campaigns. And if you see those numbers are below 25%, then in my opinion, you're probably not doing enough. Also, calculate your MDF based on your overarching goals. Just make sure you're in line with some of those best-in-class investments that we shared with you in these two areas. And finally, when you're actually executing some of these programs, remember, there's 3 deployment models here. There's the supplier to partner, the partner to customer, or the supplier to customer. Choose the right type of campaign, such as the ones that eCoast has shared with you, and know that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. For corporate resellers, you might have to do one thing. For the sub-resellers, for the distributors, different plays for different types of partners. So it's really important for you to know that you've got to cover a couple of bases with these guys. So those are some of the key takeaways. What we're going to also do is make available a core strategy report, which I promised in the beginning of the call. It's kind of the IKEA instruction manual for building out your MDF program. It's balancing MDF. So it'll be electronically delivered to those of you who respond to the to the request, and afterwards we can set up a one-to-one call with you guys and look at what you're doing versus some of the things that we've shown here and maybe help you arrive at the right balance. So with that, Will, I'll hand it back over to you and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, hey, Laz, thanks. Yeah, let's do one question here quickly, and then if there's any other questions, we can answer them offline, as we went a little bit over during this presentation. So the one that I have here right now is, what if your 25% channel should, how do you allocate MDF in that case? What would I think that would
Okay. Yeah, this is a tricky question, because if you think about it, what we showed before was anywhere between 1 and 5% channel marketing as a percentage of revenue should be invested. So obviously, if you're a $100 million company and channels is only, what, $25 million in this example, the question being asked, you're not going to base that on the $100 million. You're going to base that on the $25 million. But what I would say is, don't try to look at where you are. Look at where you want to be. So if you're 25% channels and your current revenue, just for the sake of having a number, is $10 million, think about where you want that channel to grow. So if you want to get to 15 million or 20 million, okay, that's the number that you should use for the investments that you should make in channel marketing. And then you need to kind of break that out into the first two options, the marketing to and the marketing through, and base it on the, in this case, 25 million to maybe 35 million. Say, okay, what I need to do is create MDF program to support that 15 or $10 million growth plan, and not base it on, the overall company revenues, which would be a mistake, because then you would be over-investing in the channel, which would represent a smaller part of your business. So, good question. I'm glad that you asked it.
Great. Thanks, Laz. Well, hey, Laz, thank you so much for joining us today on this webinar. I think it was very informative, and we always appreciate the research from your organization. And thank you, everyone, as well, for attending. And any follow-up questions, feel free to email myself or Laz, and you can see our contact information on the last slide, and we'll be sending this out as well for you. And that's everything. Thanks, guys.
So long, everyone.
Okay. Bye now.